eat. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table with the Pharisee at the Pharisee's house, she brought alabaster flasks of flavorant oil. So she knew Jesus was at this Pharisee's house. She came not bringing expensive oil for the host. She was bringing it to Jesus. When we come to Jesus, what are we bringing to Jesus? Now, she's a sinner, but she's bringing something to Jesus. And she's so ashamed of, remember, she's a sinner. She knows herself. We know ourselves. We sometimes think that we've done too much for this embrace of the Lord. And so she stood at his feet behind him weeping, and she began to wash his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with fragrant oil. It's important that we understand what she did. Now, she's a sinner. She knows she's a sinner. And what's great about this is the writer doesn't tell us what sin she committed. So this woman is us, right? She's a thief, a liar. She's a murderer. She's whatever we want her to be. You know, mostly they try to say women in the book, she's a prostitute, but he gives us no definition. Maybe she's married after being divorced, and you know how that works there, but she's a sinner. And it's interesting that he gives no definition of what she's done because we can relate to her. And when she came to him, she stood at his feet behind him. So Jesus is sitting down, facing this way, and she's behind him. Why is this important? Because she's so ashamed to come in front of him. She can't come in front of him, for she doesn't think she's worthy for him to look upon her. And so she stood at his feet behind him, and she was crying. Why was she crying? She was crying for the things she was done, but she was also crying because she now knew who she was in the presence of. Has God ever made you feel so amazing of the knowing that he was there, knowing that it was going to be okay, that you were in the right place, that you cried in the presence of the Lord? So this woman was there, and so she's crying. She's behind him. And it says here that she began to wash his feet with her tears. So that means that she's behind him, but by this time she has knelt down. She must be on her hands and knees, because in order for that to happen, that's how the tears get on his feet. And again, her hair is probably long because she's wiping it with his feet with her hair. So she's still not looking up at him because she's still ashamed of who she is. But she's not so fearful that she didn't come to Jesus. See, she gives us a lesson here to be remembered. She was a sinner. She had done wrong. She was embarrassed. She was ashamed. And yet, she heard that Jesus would be in this Pharisee's house. And she was going to go. And she was going to worship him. And so she goes and she takes this expensive oil, and now she's on her hands and knees, and she's crying because she's in the presence of the Lord. If it can be fixed, he can fix it. And so her tears are falling on his feet, and she wipes them with her hair of her head, and she kisses his feet, and she anoints it with the fragrant oil that she brought. Imagine that. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself, saying, this man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. We need to make sure we're not him, right? We have people that come to the church. They don't always look like us. They don't always talk like us. They don't always come from where we came from. We need to not be this guy to say, if we only knew what he was, right? He or she. And Jesus answered and said to Simon, the name of the Pharisee whose home in which he was eating, I have something to say to you. So he said it, teacher, tell him. There's a certain creditor who had two debtors, one who owed 500 denarii and the other who owed 50. And when they had nothing which to repay, he freely forgave them both. Tell me therefore, which of them will love him more? And Simon answered and said, I suppose the one whom he forgave more. And he said to him, you have rightly judged. If you look at Jesus throughout the Bible, he's talking to people who are agricultural. He tells them about sowing seeds, vineyards, fig trees. But if you look at him now talking to this Pharisee in his home, who he's having a dinner for Jesus, and you know, Jesus' crew comes with him, right? Jesus by himself. He's got to be somebody that has some money. So Jesus talks to him in his language. So he lets him know he doesn't talk to him about fig trees or vineyards or seeds to be sown. He talks to him about money, because that's what will be important to this person. He says to him, if one person, 500 denarii, a denarii is about $3 and, I don't know, 50 cents, 60 cents, but I'm gonna round it off so we can do the math. So let's just $3. So you're gonna let one person who you owe $1,500, somebody owes $1,500 and the person owes you $150. So there's 10 times the difference between the two people that owe you. But you wipe them both off. And he says, which will love him more? And he says, well, the one that he forgives more. Well, it's interesting about that because when you look at the fact that he talked about money, and he talked about debts owed, he's saying that each of us in our sin owes a debt to the Lord. That sin is really a debt that only the Lord can forgive. We can't pay him for the debt, right? We can build up all the debt in the world. We can't say, well, I'm worth $100 million. I'll give you $100 million for all the sins I've committed. A, God doesn't need your money. And B, you can never repay him. So the only person who can forgive your debt is the Lord. And so sin is a debt. And so he's letting him know that here. And so he goes on to say, then he turns to the woman and he says to Simon, do you see this woman? Now, it's interesting that he says, do you see this woman? She's in my house. I'd already talked in my head about her. I'd already said she's a sinner. I saw her when she came in here. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying, do you see her? Are you paying attention to her? Are you watching what she's doing? All you see is the sinner. I'm watching the repenter, right? Because he says, I entered your house that you hosted me at, and you gave me no water for my feet, but she's washed my feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair on her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman has not ceased to kiss my feet since the time I came in. You did not anoint my head with oil, but this woman has anointed my feet with fragrance. It's important that he keeps talking about his feet because there were no cobble streets back then. I mean, in Rome, in the city, he's walking on dusty roads. So his feet are very dirty, right? He's got on sandals. He doesn't have on the new Kanye kicks. He's literally got on sandals, right? Dusty. You know, like your mom said, don't bring no dusty feet in my house, right? But this is what he has. He has on sandals. And this woman doesn't care because he's Jesus and he can fix it, right? She says something that's so amazing that she does that we need to see that she does. She's a sinner. She's ostracized from the neighborhood. At least she's ostracized in public because the Pharisee knows her. She's welcome enough in his house, but not when he has company. Right? We don't want to be like that, right? We want to welcome everybody, even if they come in and we have, you know, I don't know, a potluck upstairs. We get some visitors that we know that maybe a little new. We want to welcome them. We don't want to shun them just because, you know, we have company. So here, she does something that we find in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15. And it's important that it's 15 and 16. But we really need to do 16, but I'll read 15 just to take us into 16. Hebrews chapter 4, 15 and 16. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was one all tempted like we are, yet without sin. But 16 is the verse I want. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. This woman came boldly to the throne of grace. Hear me. She waited. It says here, then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went to the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat. She came after he sat down. He's sitting on the throne. She came to the throne of grace boldly because he could fix it. She was a sinner. She was an ostracized woman. She was nobody. And yet she came to Jesus because he could fix it. And so everything she did was about his feet. Why? Because it shows you that she was caring for Jesus. It would have been easy to put oil on his hair, but his hair wasn't what he was walking on. That wasn't what had gotten sand on it. And what she was doing by kissing his feet was basically saying, I truly worship all of you, in the good and the bad. I'm so thankful just to be in your presence, that here are my tears, and let me wipe them with the hair on my head. And so he's calling out this Pharisee, and he's telling him, I'm in your house. You invited me. And yet, you haven't given me any water for my feet. You haven't kissed me. And this woman is literally kissing the feet that's just been kicking up sand all up and down the street. And yet, she has washed her tears on my feet with her very head. But you offered no kiss to me. You didn't anoint my head with oil because it's expensive. You didn't even think enough of me to anoint my very head with oil. And she is spending her good hard-earned money on my very feet that I'm going to have to walk out here and get dirty again. That is what he's telling him. And that's why the focus is not on Jesus, it's on her. Look at all she's doing. Look at all she's doing. She boldly came, not just to Jesus, but she ran up in somebody else's house to get to Jesus. She didn't care what he thought. And we need to see how some people hurting so bad should not worry about what we think about them. Sometimes we're the reasons people stay out because they say, well, I have these tattoos, I have this, I have that. What's people in church going to think about me? Don't worry about those people. When you got those tattoos, you wasn't worried about those people. Don't worry about these people in here. Nat King Cole went to a house once. My father told me the story. The great singer Nat King Cole, and you know, he was singing back when nation was segregation. And so he goes to this dinner party that he was invited to by these white people. He gets there, dinner's going to be served, and they ask Nat King Cole, would he sing a song? He didn't come in to sing a song, he came to be a guest. But anyway, they asked him to sing a song. Nat King Cole says, I don't sing for my supper. And he left. Because what Nat King Cole realized was he wasn't there as a guest. He was there for the host. He was there to make the host look like, I have Nat King Cole as a neighbor, and he's going to sing for me. This Pharisee wasn't really bringing Jesus to host Jesus. It was so people could say, hey, Jeff had Jesus.